Welcome to another deep dive.
hmm
Today we're going to be talking all about aquatic ecosystems.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, it's something that we've all heard a lot about in the news lately, especially when it comes to things like threats to coral reefs and
Absolutely.
yeah, and so we're going to unpack what's really going on with these underwater cities.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I think it's important to kind of like zoom out and get a sense of just how diverse and important these water worlds really are.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's easy to kind of just think about, you know, oceans and lakes and rivers as just big bodies of water.
Right.
But there's so much more than that.
Yeah.
They're complex ecosystems teeming with life, and they're absolutely vital to the health of our entire planet.
So when we say aquatic ecosystem, what does that actually mean?
Well, the obvious answer is water, right?
Okay.
But it's more about the community of organisms that live in and interact with that water.
Okay.
And it can be freshwater or saltwater. And it's all those interactions that create this really delicate balance that sustains this just incredible array of life forms.
So we've got these two main categories that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. Huh?
Freshwater and marine ecosystems.
Yes.
So what's the key difference?
Well, it all comes down to salinity, the amount of dissolved salt in the water.
Okay.
So freshwater ecosystems, like lakes and rivers and ponds, have very low salt content.
Right. So like if you go swimming in a lake,
Exactly.
that's freshwater.
Exactly.
Okay. So marine ecosystems are the salty ones,
Yeah.
oceans, coral reefs, all in.
Exactly. And they cover over 70% of our planet and hold about 97% of all the water on Earth.
That is wild.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So let's dive into these marine ecosystems. And I think a good place to start is with coral reefs.
Okay.
Um, I think, people have seen pictures and they just look so vibrant and full of life.
Yeah.
And I always am just like, what is going on down there?
Yeah, they're like bustling underwater cities built by these tiny little animals called coral polyps.
Oh.
So imagine like thousands of these little creatures coming together to form a single reef.
Wow.
Almost like one massive living organism.
It's just crazy to me that something so small can create something so big
Right.
and complex.
It's amazing.
Yeah. What kinds of creatures live in a coral reef?
Oh gosh. You name it.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got your brightly colored fish like parrotfish and angelfish.
Right.
And of course, like the iconic clownfish finding shelter amongst the stinging tentacles of anemones.
Why, clownfish live in anemones.
Yeah.
Isn't that dangerous?
It is for most things.
Yeah.
But that's where that symbiotic relationship comes in.
Okay.
The clownfish is immune to the anemone's sting
Oh, wow.
and actually helps protect the anemone from predators. And in return, the anemone provides a safe haven for the clownfish.
Interesting.
It's a win-win situation.
Yeah, it's like you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours.
Exactly.
So it's not just like a random collection of creatures all living together. It's like a whole web of relationships.
Absolutely. Very complex interactions going on.
What other creatures can you find in coral reefs?
Gosh, sponges, jellyfish, crabs, lobster, shrimp, and then, even bigger creatures like sea turtles, dolphins, and sharks.
Wow, it's like a whole, city down there.
It really is a biodiversity hotspot, unlike anything you'd find on land.
Totally.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those places where the rivers meet the sea.
Okay.
I remember reading about those in school, and those are very unique ecosystems, right?
Yeah, you're talking about estuaries.
Estuaries.
Yeah, those are the transition zones where fresh water from rivers mixes with the salty ocean water.
Right.
And they're incredibly productive ecosystems.
Okay.
They're kind of like the nurseries of the ocean.
Nurseries. What do you mean by that?
Well, many fish and shellfish species use estuaries as like breeding grounds and nurseries for their young.
Oh, interesting.
The calm, sheltered waters and the abundance of food make it the perfect place for baby fish to grow up before venturing out into the open ocean.
So they're like the kindergartens of the sea. I love that. So I imagine that the creatures living in those estuaries need special adaptations to survive in that kind of constantly changing environment.
They do. It's really cool. So, the salinity levels are constantly fluctuating as the freshwater and saltwater mix.
Right.
And the organisms that live in estuaries have to be able to handle that constant change.
Wow.
They're the ultimate adapters.
That's so cool. So speaking of adapting, have you ever seen pictures of those underwater forests
Yes.
with like the giant kelp
The
swaying?
whole forest, they're beautiful.
Yeah. So tell me about those.
Well, they're found in cool, nutrient-rich waters along coastlines, and they're just as vibrant and diverse as coral reefs.
Oh, wow.
Kelp, which is a type of large brown algae, can grow up to 100 feet tall, forming these dense underwater canopies.
100 feet tall.
Yeah,
That's taller than my house.
I know, it's amazing.
What kind of creatures live in a kelp forest?
Oh, you've got everything from tiny sea urchins grazing on the kelp to playful sea otters that wrap themselves in the kelp fronds to keep from drifting away. That's so cute.
It
Yeah.
is. And then, of course, you have larger predators like sharks that might patrol the edges of the kelp forest looking for a meal.
Right.
It's a very dynamic ecosystem.
Yeah, so we've explored these saltwater ecosystems
Hmm.
from, the bustling coral reefs to the estuaries and the kelp forests.
Yeah.
What about the freshwater world? What's going on in like rivers and lakes and ponds?
Well, freshwater ecosystems are just as fascinating and diverse,
Right.
each with their own unique characteristics and challenges. And believe it or not, they're facing just as many threats as their saltwater counterparts.
That's what I was thinking because, we hear so much about what's happening in the oceans, but it seems like those freshwater ecosystems
Yeah.
are important for, our drinking water. And
We can't forget about those.
yeah, so let's take a closer look at what's happening in those freshwater worlds and why they're so vital to our planet's health.
Let's do it. I'm
Awesome.
excited. Me too. Yeah. Okay, so let's wade into the world of freshwater ecosystems. When I think of freshwater, I think of like peaceful lakes and, rushing rivers.
Yeah, you got it. And just like in the ocean, there's a whole classification system for these freshwater habitats.
Okay.
We can divide them into two main types, lentic and lotic.
Lentic and Lotic. Those sound very sciencey.
I know, right? But think of it this way. Lentic ecosystems are the still waters, like lakes and ponds.
Okay.
So, picture a calm lake reflecting the sky, maybe with some water lilies floating on the surface. That's your classic lentic ecosystem.
Okay, I can picture that. What about Lotic?
Lotic ecosystems are the flowing waters like rivers and streams.
Okay,
Think of a rushing river cascading over rocks, carving its way through the landscape that's Lotic.
I'm getting thirsty just thinking about it. Let's start with rivers. I feel like they're so powerful, constantly shaping the land around them.
Yeah, they really are like nature sculptors, and those river currents are so important.
Okay,
Well, they transport nutrients, they oxygenate the water, and they create this really diverse array of habitats for all sorts of creatures.
so it's not just about the water itself, it's about the movement and how it shapes the entire environment.
Exactly. And rivers are also like these vital connectors between land and water.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, think about all the animals that come to rivers to drink, or the nutrients that flow from the land into the water, supporting these entire food webs.
Wow, it's amazing how everything is so interconnected.
Mm-hmm.
So what about lakes? I remember learning about different zones within a lake. Is that right?
You do have a great memory. Lakes have very distinct zones, each with its own unique set of characteristics and inhabitants.
Okay, let's walk through those zones. So pretend we're taking a virtual dive, from the shore of a lake down to the very bottom.
Okay, imagine we're standing at the edge of this clear blue lake right at the shoreline where the water meets the land. We have the littoral zone. So this is that shallow, sunlit area where you might see cattails and reeds, growing dragonflies floating about, and maybe even a frog perched on a lily pad.
It's like a bustling border town between the land and the water.
Exactly.
What happens when we go further out?
As we wade deeper, we enter the limnetic zone, the open water area where sunlight still penetrates.
Okay.
So think of it like the sun-drenched open ocean within the lake, teeming with microscopic life.
Okay.
This is where phytoplankton, the tiny plant-like organisms that form the base of the food chain, thrive, along with zooplankton, the tiny animals that feed on them.
So it's like a hidden world of microscopic creatures fueling the whole lake ecosystem.
Yeah, it is. And as we descend even further, the sunlight starts to fade, and we enter the mysterious profundal zone.
Ooh, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah, this is the deep water area where light is limited, the water is cooler, and the biodiversity is lower.
Okay.
It's a realm of low oxygen and limited food sources, so only very specialized organisms can survive down here.
Wow, it's like venturing into the depths of a hidden world. What about the very bottom of the lake?
That's the benthic zone, the lake floor. Think of it as the ultimate recycling center. Decomposers break down dead organisms and organic matter, releasing nutrients back into the ecosystem. And you'll also find, various bottom-dwelling creatures down here, worms, mollusks, and some fish that have adapted to life in the darkness.
Wow, it's just amazing to think about all these different layers within a single lake, each one supporting its own little community of life.
Yeah, it really highlights the complexity and interconnectedness of these freshwater ecosystems. But unfortunately, these delicate balances are facing a growing number of threats.
That's what I was thinking. We talked about what's happening, in the oceans with coral reefs and things, but What about, those closer to home? What's happening to our freshwater lakes and rivers?
Well, pollution is a major problem.
Okay.
Agricultural runoff, industrial waste, and even urban stormwater carry pollutants into our waterways, harming aquatic life and contaminating our drinking water sources.
Yeah, I've actually seen signs, near rivers and streams warning about, the dangers of agricultural runoff.
Right.
But I don't really understand, how does that actually impact the ecosystem?
So imagine a farm field that's been treated with fertilizers and pesticides. When it rains, those chemicals are washed off the land and carried into nearby streams and rivers.
So those chemicals that are supposed to help crops grow are ending up polluting the water.
Exactly. And those excess nutrients from the fertilizers can actually cause algal blooms,
Okay.
which deplete oxygen in the water and create these dead zones where fish and other aquatic life can't survive.
Wow, that's pretty devastating.
Yeah.
So are there other types of pollution impacting freshwater ecosystems?
Sadly, yes. Industrial waste can introduce heavy metals and other toxic substances into rivers and lakes. And even seemingly harmless things like plastic waste can end up in our waterways, harming wildlife and degrading water quality.
It's really sad to think about the cumulative impact of all these things.
Yeah.
What about the dams and diversions that we build? Do those impact freshwater ecosystems?
Absolutely. Dams and diversions alter the natural flow of rivers, disrupting fish migration patterns, changing water temperatures, and fragmenting habitats.
Right.
They can also lead to sediment buildup and alter the downstream flow of nutrients.
It seems like we're constantly tinkering with these delicate systems.
Yeah.
What about the big one, climate change? How is that impacting freshwater ecosystems?
Climate change is a major threat, causing changes in precipitation patterns, leading to more frequent droughts and floods. And rising temperatures are warming up lakes and rivers, impacting aquatic life that's adapted to very specific temperature ranges.
So it's not just about rising sea levels, it's about these cascading effects on freshwater systems as well.
Exactly. And these impacts are already being felt around the world, with some lakes shrinking, rivers drying up, and fish populations declining.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
We've explored, this incredible diversity of aquatic ecosystems, from the vastness of the oceans to the stillness of a lake. And it's clear that they're facing some serious challenges. What can we do to protect these vital environments? I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by all this.
You're not alone. It can feel daunting. But the good news is that there are solutions, and even small actions can make a difference.
Okay, I'm ready for some good news.
Yeah.
What can we do, both as individuals and as a society, to help protect these aquatic ecosystems that are so important to our planet's health?
Let's dive into that next.
Okay, so we've been exploring the world of aquatic ecosystems,
We have.
and it's clear that they're facing a lot of challenges, and I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. But you said that there is some good news,
There
that
is.
there are things that we can do to protect these vital environments.
Yes, absolutely.
So give me the good news. Let's start with, what can we do in our own lives? What are some simple changes that can actually add up to making a big difference?
Okay, well, one of the most impactful things you can do is reduce your plastic consumption.
Okay.
Plastic pollution is a huge threat to aquatic ecosystems.
Right.
So, using reusable bags, bottles, and containers can make a real difference.
Yeah, that's something that I'm definitely working on. What about, at home, what are some things we can do?
Well, conserving water is another simple but effective step.
Okay.
Taking shorter showers, fixing leaky faucets, and watering your lawn efficiently can help reduce the strain on freshwater resources.
Yeah, it's so easy to take water for granted,
It is.
especially when you live in a place where it seems plentiful, but
Right.
yeah, every drop counts.
Yeah.
What about the products that we buy? Can that make a difference?
Absolutely. Being a conscious consumer is key.
Okay.
Look for products that are sustainably sourced and packaged, and avoid those that contain harmful chemicals that can end up in our waterways.
So reading labels and doing a little research before you buy.
Yeah, exactly. It's about voting with your wallet.
Right, exactly. And what about seafood? I know that that's something that, a lot of people are concerned about, making sustainable choices.
Yeah, it's really important. Look for seafood that's been certified by reputable organizations as being caught or farmed responsibly.
I've seen those labels at the grocery store, but sometimes I'm like, I don't even know what to look for.
Right. Well, there are several organizations that promote sustainable seafood, like the Marine Stewardship Council, MSC, and the Aquaculture Stewardship Council, ASC. So look for their logos on seafood products.
Okay, that's super helpful. So we've talked about some individual actions. What about the bigger picture? What can we do as a society to protect these aquatic ecosystems?
Well, that's where policy and innovation come in.
Okay.
We need strong environmental regulations that limit pollution from industries and agriculture, promote sustainable fishing practices, and protect critical habitats.
It sounds like we need like a multi-pronged approach.
We do. It's a complex issue, so we have to address pollution at its source. Manage fisheries, sustainably protect and restore habitats, and take action on climate change.
Right. Speaking of climate change, it seems like such a massive problem. What can we realistically do to like mitigate its impact on aquatic ecosystems?
While transitioning to renewable energy sources, improving energy efficiency, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions are crucial steps. And we also need to invest in research and innovation to develop these climate resilient strategies for managing aquatic ecosystems.
So it's about like making those big systemic changes, but also like finding ways to adapt to the changes that are already happening.
Exactly. It's a two-pronged approach, mitigation and adaptation. We need to do everything we can to slow down climate change, but we also need to prepare for the impacts that are already being felt.
What about innovation? You mentioned that earlier. What are some of the things that are giving you hope?
Oh, there's so many promising innovations emerging. New water treatment technologies are being developed to remove pollutants from wastewater and contaminated water bodies.
So cleaning up the mess we've already made. What else?
While sustainable aquaculture practices like recirculating aquaculture systems are minimizing the environmental impact of fish farming and reducing pressure on wild fish stocks.
That's great news for seafood lovers like me. Any other innovations you're particularly excited about?
Advancements in remote sensing and underwater drones are allowing us to monitor and study aquatic ecosystems in unprecedented detail.
Wow.
And biodegradable plastics and other eco-friendly materials are offering alternatives to traditional plastics that pollute our oceans and waterways.
It sounds like technology is playing a really crucial role.
It is in both understanding and protecting these vital ecosystems.
So we've explored, the beauty, the complexity, and the importance of these vital environments. We've talked about a lot of different things that we can do to protect them,
Yeah.
from individual actions to, policy changes and technological innovations.
It's really inspiring to see so much effort going into protecting our planet's water resources.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm curious to hear from you. What resonated with you?
Yeah.
What are you already doing to protect our planet's water resources? What new commitments can you make?
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts and ideas on our social media channels.
Remember, every action counts. Whether it's reducing your plastic consumption, conserving water, making sustainable seafood choices, or supporting policies that protect our water resources, you can be a part of the solution. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of aquatic ecosystems. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep making waves for a healthier planet.
Absolutely.